Welcome to True Crime Threads, where every thread unravels a chilling truth. In today's case, we dive into the haunting story of two sisters whose darkest secret led to a trail of murders. Lena and Mara Whitmore were known in the quiet town of Ash Grove as inseparable sisters. Lena, the older one, was calm, nurturing, and worked as a school librarian. Mara, just a year younger, was lively and charming, often seen photographing landscapes and painting local scenery. They lived together in their inherited Victorian house, which locals often called the Whitmore Cottage. Their parents had died in a tragic fire when the sisters were in their early 20s, leaving the two to depend solely on each other. To neighbors and friends, their bond was unshakable, an example of sisterly devotion. But behind the closed curtains of the Whitmore home, a disturbing secret was carefully hidden. The Whitmore cottage stood at the edge of town, surrounded by wild roses and a low iron fence. It was the kind of place children pointed at and whispered stories about. Though there was never any real proof of anything unusual happening there, the house always smelled of old books and lavender oil, and the sisters maintained it with care. Lena spent her evenings reading on the front porch, while Mara painted in the attic under the golden light of dusk. To outsiders, their life seemed almost idyllic. To sisters creating a peaceful world for themselves after so much loss. What no one saw was how their relationship had grown into something deeply unhealthy. Lena had always taken on the role of protector, shielding Mara from the world. After the fire that claimed their parents' lives, that protectiveness turned into control. Mara, in turn, relied on Lena for everything from financial decisions to emotional reassurance. Their world revolved around each other so completely that there was little room for anyone else. Few people were allowed inside the Whitmore home. Those who did visit noted the strange stillness, the overly tidy rooms, and the feeling that everything inside had been frozen in time. There were no family photos on the walls, only landscape paintings and books arranged alphabetically. In the kitchen, two mugs always Saturday on the counter, identical and shit on the same side. They dressed similarly, often in long skirts and cardigans, and always referred to each other in the present tense, as if the past had been erased. Though the sisters rarely attended social events, Mara would occasionally go to local art shows or farmers' markets. Usually alone, people liked her instantly. She was warm and curious, but she never stayed to chat along. If asked about Lena, she would smile politely and say she was resting or busy with work. Nobody ever saw Lena outside of the library or her home. After years of living like this, their connection began to draw concern from a few observant townfolk. Some whispered that the sisters were too close. Others thought the tragedy of losing their parents had simply bound them in grief. Still, no one could deny that the Whitmore sisters lived in near total isolation. Everything seemed calm, even boring, in Ash Grove, but the truth was hiding in plain sight. Layered beneath routines and quiet smiles, the intimacy between Lena and Mara, so carefully disguised as familial love, had taken a darker turn, one that would soon spiral into something far more disturbing than anyone in town could ever imagine. The first sign of trouble came when Lena's co-worker, a soft-spoken man named Mr. Harland, vanished without a trace. He was last seen entering the Whitmore house one late afternoon. His car was found parked nearby. He's still in the ignition. Lena told police she hadn't seen him that day. There were no signs of struggle, no blood, no evidence. It became just another missing persons case. But those who knew Mr. Harlan whispered about a growing closeness between him and Mara. Some said he had tried to break it off, worried about Lena's strange behavior. 6 months later, a hiker found a shallow grave in the woods outside Ash Grove. Inside was Mr. Harlan's decomposed body, bound with twine and wrapped in a floral bedsheet that matched one sold decades ago. Mr. Harlan had been a quiet figure in town, the type of man who blended into the background. He worked at the library with Lena for nearly 2 years and was often seen shelving books, helping elderly visitors find titles, or scribbling in a small leather notebook. It was only in the months before his disappearance that people noticed his friendship with Mara becoming more frequent. They'd sit in the park and talk, often sharing lunch on a bench near the lake. He seemed to be drawn to her gentle energy, while she, in turn, looked happier in his company. And, without warning, he was gone. The local police conducted a basic investigation. They questioned Lena, who claimed he hadn't shown up for work that day. She said she assumed he'd taken a leave or fallen ill. Mara said even less, only mentioning that she hadn't seen him for a few days. Despite the lack of solid leads, suspicion quietly began to circle around the Whitmore sisters. But without physical evidence, there was nothing that could be done. The discovery of Mr. Harlan's body came as a shock. The hiker who found it had been wandering deep in the woods. Well off the usual trail, what he uncovered was horrifying: a shallow grave dug under the roots of an old elm. The body tightly wrapped, hands bound behind the back. The sheet used to cover the corpse bore a faded pattern of tiny blue flowers. Older residents of Ashgrove remembered seeing that same fabric in the Whitmore household years ago, when their mother used it for curtains. But the sheet had no tags, no traceable manufacturing details. Investigators documented the scene and sent everything to the lab. The decomposition had advanced far for precise timing, but the body was confirmed to be Mr. Harlan through dental records. There was no weapon found, and cause of death couldn't be conclusively determined due to the state of the remains. The town's silence grew thicker after that. People avoided walking near the Whitmore property. Children crossed the street rather than pass by the house. And though police questioned the sisters again, they remained composed. Lena repeated the same answer: she had no idea what happened. Mara looked pale but calm. Still, beneath the surface, Ashgrove knew something was wrong, and the fear grew when, not long after the first grave was discovered, another man connected to Mara suddenly vanished. Over 2 years, 3 more men vanished: a local gallery owner, a traveling handyman, and a young nurse from the nearby clinic. All had some kind of connection with Mara. Each man had flirted with her or visited the house. Rumors spread like wildfire. People began to look at the Whitmore sisters differently. Mara became more reclusive. Lena stopped attending church. Neighbors said they often heard late-night digging sounds or loud arguments muffled behind closed windows. It wasn't until a retired detective moved to Ashgrove and took a personal interest in the cold cases that things began to unravel. He noticed one strange commonality. In every case, last phone signals of the missing men all pinged near the sisters' house. He started watching from a distance. The pattern was too precise to be a coincidence. The gallery owner, Adam Keller, had organized a small art event in Ashgrove and featured Mara's paintings. After the event, he visited her home to discuss showcasing her work in the city. He never made it out of town. His rental car was later found abandoned by the riverbank, untouched, with his wallet and phone still inside. The handyman, Vincent Boyd, had been hired to repair a leak in the Whitmore basement. He told his brother he was planning to ask Mara out once the job was finished. That was the last time anyone heard from him. His van, full of tools, Saturday parked just a few streets away from the Whitmore house, never moved again. The windows were rolled up. The battery eventually died. The young nurse, Thomas Gray, had met Mara during a local charity fair. They'd gone on several quiet walks together, and Mara had even introduced him to Lena. According to one of his colleagues, he had confided that something about the sisters made him uneasy. He said he felt watched, and he vanished without notifying work or family. As these disappearances accumulated, fear settled into the town. People began warning others not to go near the Whitmore house. A few brave residents sent anonymous letters to the police, expressing concern but offering no real proof. The authorities couldn't open an official investigation without solid leads. When the retired detective, Elliot Brand, moved to Ashgrove, he had no intention of getting involved in local matters. But as he read old news articles and overheard whispers in cafes, curiosity drew him in. He had worked homicide for decades and could spot a pattern others overlooked. One by one, he mapped out the disappearances, the last known sightings, and cell tower data. Each time, the final phone signal was traced to the same 3-block radius surrounding the Whitmore home. Brandon approached the sisters right away. Instead, he started taking notes, walking past their house at different hours, and recording what he saw. He observed the same habits. Lena never left except for groceries. Always alone and always quiet. Mara, once warm with townsfolk, now stayed inside for days at a time. Occasionally, he noticed faint lights flicker in the basement, or saw soil freshly disturbed in the garden beds, even though no plants were being grown. What had once seemed like a string of tragedies now began to take the shape of something far more calculated. The sisters were no longer seen as victims of loss. In Bran's eyes, they were hiding something far more sinister, and he was determined to find out what. The detective's quiet investigation uncovered something deeply disturbing. Old psychiatric reports revealed that Lena had once been institutionalized after her parents' death. She had severe dependency issues and feared abandonment. Mara, always the more outgoing, had stayed by her side, even withdrawing from college to care for her. Digging deeper, the detective found something more chilling. Lena and Mara had not only been emotionally entwined, but psychologically entangled in a destructive, obsessive relationship. Their sisterhood had grown into something more, a hidden, intimate dependency that had crossed dangerous boundaries. Lena believed anyone close to Mara was a threat, and Mara, too weak or too scared to stop her sister, allowed the killings to happen. Whether out of fear or misguided love, she helped cover up each crime. The police obtained a warrant and searched the Whitmore house. In the basement, behind a false wall, they found the buried remains of all 3 other missing men, wrapped, labeled, and preserved with eerie care. Detective Brand spent weeks sifting through medical records, court documents, and archived therapy notes. Lena had been admitted to a mental health facility in another county under a different name, something that had been buried to protect her privacy at the time. She had exhibited signs of severe attachment disorder. Her dependency on Mara had escalated after the fire that killed their parents. According to the psychiatrist's assessment, Lena often spoke of Mara as her anchor and expressed violent fantasies about anyone she believed might take her away. Brand pieced together how Mara had given up her life to care for her sister. Her college scholarship had gone unused. Friends she once had drifted away after she stopped returning messages. She never spoke to neighbors beyond polite greetings. She didn't date. Her world revolved around Lennon. It had for years. Old photographs and receipts helped build a timeline. Paintings by Mara sold through the gallery Adam Keller owned. Handyman Vincent Boyd's notes about the plumbing work at the house. A charity donation in Thomas Gray's name, written in Mara's handwriting. The evidence was thin, circumstantial, but it was enough to raise serious concerns. Brand approached the local authorities with what he had found. After weeks of pressure and persistence, a warrant was finally granted to search the Whitmore home. Officers arrived quietly at dawn, careful not to alarm the sisters. Lena opened the door without resistance. Mara stood behind her, pale and still, as cast to the floor. The search led them to the basement, a cold, silent room filled with old furniture and paint supplies. But in the back, behind a tall shelving unit, an uneven section of wall caught an officer's attention. When the false panel was removed, a crawl space was revealed. Inside were makeshift graves, each wrapped in linen and marked with initials drawn in black ink. The bodies were partially mummified, resting in disturbing silence. The air was dry and still, as if even time had been sealed away. Each body matched the missing men's descriptions, and forensic analysis later confirmed their identities. The sheets they were wrapped in matched the one found with Mr. Harlan's remains. What was once suspicion was now undeniable truth. The quiet life of the Whitmore sisters had been a cover for something chilling. What Brand had uncovered was not just a string of disappearances, but a pattern of possession, obsession, and calculated concealment. The arrest shocked Ashgrove. The news was splashed across every local channel. The once beloved sisters were charged with multiple counts of murder. During the trial, Mara broke down and confessed everything, but she claimed she never killed me buried. She blamed Lena entirely. Lena, on the other hand, refused to speak. Her journal, discovered in a floorboard, revealed a different story. In it, she wrote about how Mara asked her to get rid of the men who distracted her, and how she protected their secret love by any means necessary. The court was divided. Was Mara a victim or the puppeteer? Was Lena mentally ill or just possessive beyond repair? In the end, both sisters were sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. But even in prison, they requested to be placed together, sharing the same cell block. That request was denied. 3 weeks later, Lena was found dead in her cell in apparent suicide, and Nara, she never spoke again. The trial drew national attention, with reporters camping outside the courthouse and true crime enthusiasts flooding online forums with theories. Spectators packed the courtroom, hoping to catch a glimpse of the sisters who had haunted a town with silence. When Mara took the stand, her confession sent chills through the room. She admitted to digging the graves, wrapping the bodies, and helping hide the evidence, but she insisted she had never taken a life. According to her, Lena acted alone, consumed by jealousy, unable to let anyone come between them. The prosecution painted Lena as the aggressor, manipulative, and dangerously obsessed. The defense countered by presenting years of medical records detailing Lena's mental health decline. Her attorneys described her as someone broken by grief and incapable of understanding reality. They leaned heavily on her psychiatric past, portraying her as a woman twisted by trauma. Then came the journal. Hidden beneath a loose floorboard in Lena's bedroom, the small leather notebook revealed pages of disturbing thoughts and obsessive declarations. She wrote about how each man had threatened the sanctity of what she and Mara shared. She called Mara her belonging, her only safe place. Most damning were the entries where Lena suggested that Mara encouraged her actions, speaking in veiled but suggestive language. Phrases like, "He makes things complicated," and "I wish it could just be you and me again." The entries were ambiguous, and that ambiguity became the heart of the courtroom debate. Some read them as clear signs that Mara had influenced the murders. Others believed they were the writings of a disturbed woman, misinterpreting her sister's emotional dependence. The jury deliberated for days. In the end, both women were found guilty. The court concluded that Lena had committed the murders, but that Mara, by assisting in hiding the bodies and remaining silent, was equally complicit, sentencing them to life without parole. The judge noted the chilling nature of their bond and the irreversible damage done to the victims' families. After the sentencing, prison officials denied the sisters' request to be placed together. Within 3 weeks, Lena was found hanging from a bedsheet in her cell. No note was left. Her death was ruled a suicide. Mara was moved to isolation due to psychological concerns. She refused meals, stopped responding to staff, and stared at the wall for hours. She never spoke another word, not to the guards, not to her lawyer, and not even when her appeals were denied. The silence that once protected the sisters had finally returned at this time. As punishment,